AITA for confronting my girlfriend for excluding my daughter from a family trip? I, a 42-year-old man, have been in a relationship with my girlfriend, Jessica, who is 39, for just over 2 years. We both have children from previous marriages. I have a 10-year-old daughter, Emma, and Jessica has 2 children, a 14-year-old son named Ethan and a 12-year-old daughter named Chloe. For context, my ex-wife and I have a 50-50 custody agreement for Emma, but I often have her on weekends and holidays because my ex-wife's job requires frequent travel. Jessica has primary custody of her children, and her ex-husband has them every other weekend. I believed our blended family dynamic was progressing smoothly. The kids have their typical sibling-like disagreements, but nothing ever escalated. Emma is a bit more reserved and quieter compared to Jessica's more outgoing kids, but she has always been polite and made an effort to connect with them. I have consistently tried to treat Ethan and Chloe as my own, helping them with their schoolwork, driving them to their activities, and generally being an active presence in their lives. About a month ago, Jessica and her kids moved into my house. I purchased a 4-bedroom home after my divorce, so there is ample space for everyone. Emma has her own room, decorated precisely to her taste, for when she stays with me. I have always been firm on the point that even though Emma isn't here full-time, this is absolutely her home as well. Now, let's get to the incident that prompted my calculated response. Approximately 2 months ago, Jessica brought up the idea of planning a spring trip to Florida. Her parents own a condo in Orlando, and she thought it would be a wonderful opportunity to visit the theme parks for a week. I agreed it was a fantastic idea and told her I would coordinate with my ex-wife to ensure Emma could join us for the entire week, as it would overlap with some of her mother's scheduled time. Jessica offered to manage all the bookings, citing her familiarity with the area and her knowledge of which parks the kids would enjoy most. I proposed splitting all costs down the middle, but she insisted on covering the airfare herself, as she had a substantial amount of airline miles she wanted to use. She suggested I could cover the theme park tickets to make things even, which seemed perfectly fair to me. Over the next few weeks, she would periodically mention making a reservation at a certain restaurant or booking a specific attraction, and I often saw her researching things on her laptop. I was in the middle of a demanding project at my job, so I was grateful she was handling all the arrangements. Emma was incredibly excited. She had never been to Florida, and I often found her watching vlogs about the different parks and rides on YouTube. About 3 weeks before our departure date, I was reviewing my calendar to schedule some work meetings when I noticed I didn't have any flight information. I asked Jessica for our flight times so I could block off the correct days. "Oh, we leave at 10 a.m. on Saturday the 13th and fly back the following Saturday evening," she said casually. "Perfect. Could you forward me the confirmation email? I just want to get it into my calendar," I replied. She seemed to hesitate for a moment. "I haven't sent it to my email. It's just saved in my airline account." Something about her tone made me feel a bit uneasy. Later that evening, while she was taking a shower, I asked if I could borrow her laptop to check a few work emails, as mine was charging. While I had it open, I decided to log into her airline account to look at the booking details myself. That's when I made the discovery. She had only booked 4 tickets. 1 for herself, 1 for Ethan, 1 for Chloe, and 1 for me. There was no ticket for Emma. I was confused, thinking perhaps she had made a separate booking for Emma for some reason. I waited until she got out of the shower and asked her directly, "Hey, I was just looking at the flight confirmation, and I only see 4 tickets. Where's Emma's?" She gave me a look that was a mixture of guilt and annoyance at being questioned. Then she said, "Oh, I didn't book 1 for her. I just assumed she could stay with her grandmother for that week." I was floored. "What do you mean? This is a family trip. Emma is part of this family." Jessica shrugged. "Well, she's only with us part-time. And my parents' condo only has 3 bedrooms. 1 for us, 1 for Ethan, and 1 for Chloe. There wouldn't be any room for Emma unless she slept on the pull-out sofa in the living room, which would be awkward for everyone. And you didn't think to have a conversation with me before making that decision on your own?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice from shaking with anger. Honestly, I didn't see it as a major issue. She's with her mom half the time as it is, so she's used to not being included in every single thing we do. Besides, the tickets were expensive, and I only had enough miles for 4. I was rendered speechless. My daughter was used to not being included, and if the miles were the problem, Why hadn't she just told me so I could pay for the ticket myself? That is unacceptable, I said with finality. Emma is my daughter, and if we are taking a family vacation, she is coming with us. I will buy her ticket. Jessica rolled her eyes slightly. Fine, but I have no idea where she's going to sleep. And we've already planned all the activities for a group of 4. It was in that moment that I understood this wasn't an oversight. She had deliberately planned the trip this way. All those weeks of planning were based on the assumption that my daughter would not be there. I simply nodded and said, I'll figure something out. And that's precisely what I did. After that conversation, I did a lot of thinking. This wasn't the first instance of Jessica subtly marginalizing Emma, but it was by far the most blatant. There had been smaller incidents before, like forgetting to buy snacks Emma liked during a grocery run, choosing movies that Emma had no interest in on nights she was with us, or accidentally scheduling activities with her friends and their children on the weekends Emma was supposed to be home. I had addressed these issues with her in the past, and Jessica always had a ready excuse or would claim I was being overly sensitive. But this, purposefully excluding my daughter from a family trip, was a line I could not let her cross. So, I began to formulate my plan. I didn't bring up the trip with Jessica again. Instead, I quietly went online and canceled my own ticket for the flight she had booked. The airline issued a credit that I could use for a future flight. Then, I booked 2 brand new tickets for Emma and me to fly to San Diego instead of Orlando. The travel dates were the same, but the destination was completely different. I had always wanted to take Emma to the San Diego Zoo and SeaWorld, and she had been talking about wanting to see the Pacific Ocean for years. I booked a lovely hotel right on the beach, made reservations at several kid-friendly restaurants, and created a full itinerary centered entirely on activities Emma would love. I didn't share any of this with Jessica. As far as she knew, I was still going to Florida with her and her children. I did, however, call my ex-wife to let her in on the change of plans. She was completely supportive and even gave me a few suggestions for fun things to do in San Diego that she knew Emma would enjoy. In the weeks leading up to the trip, whenever Jessica mentioned something about Florida, I would just give a non-committal nod or a vague response. I packed separate suitcases for Emma and me and kept them hidden in my SUV so Jessica wouldn't see them. The night before our departure, I told Emma about our special trip. I explained that it would be just the 2 of us going to California, instead of Florida with Jessica and her kids. Emma was ecstatic. She had been feeling a little nervous about the Florida trip anyway, because Ethan and Chloe had been teasing her, telling her she would be stuck sleeping on an uncomfortable couch. On the morning of the trip, we all drove to the airport together in my SUV, Jessica, her 2 kids, Emma, and me. Jessica's flight to Orlando was scheduled for 10 a.m., while our flight to San Diego was at 11:30 a.m. We all walked into the terminal, and I led everyone toward the airline check-in area. Jessica went straight to the counter for her airline, and I simply said, "We'll meet you at the gate." I then took Emma to a different airline's counter to check in for our flight to San Diego. After we got our boarding passes and checked our bags, we went to an airport cafe for breakfast. By the time we finished eating, it was nearly time for Jessica's flight to board. I sent her a text message. "What gate are you at? We're on our way to say goodbye before you take off." She replied with her gate number, clearly thinking we were just running a bit behind, but would be joining them shortly. Emma and I walked over to her gate. When we got there, Jessica looked relieved to see us, but then her expression shifted to confusion when she noticed we weren't carrying any luggage. "Where are your bags?" she asked. "They're going to start boarding any minute now." I smiled and said, "Oh, we're not on that flight." Her eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "Exactly what I said," I replied calmly. "Emma and I are going to San Diego. Since you didn't feel it was important to include my daughter on your family vacation, we decided to have our own." Her face cycled through a range of emotions. Shock, then anger, then humiliation. Ethan and Chloe were staring at us, their eyes wide. "You cannot be serious," she hissed, trying to keep her voice low as other passengers started to notice the tension. "You need to get on this flight right now." "That's not going to be possible," I said evenly. "I canceled my ticket weeks ago. My seat has likely already been given to someone on standby. And besides, Emma and I have our own plans." "You're ruining everything," she lashed out, no longer trying to hide her anger. "What am I supposed to tell my parents? They're expecting all of us. I suggest you tell them the truth." Tell them that you deliberately excluded my daughter from a family trip and just assumed I would be fine with it. Just then, the gate agent made the announcement for the start of boarding for her flight. Jessica looked back and forth between me and the gate, clearly torn between prolonging the argument and missing her plane. "We need to go, Mom," Ethan said, looking extremely uncomfortable with the public scene. "This conversation is not over," she warned me. "You are embarrassing me in front of this entire airport." I just shrugged. "You embarrassed yourself when you decided that Emma wasn't part of the family. Have a nice trip." I took Emma's hand, and we walked away, leaving Jessica fuming behind us. Emma squeezed my hand and whispered, "Thanks, Dad." We had a truly amazing time in San Diego. Emma saw the ocean for the first time. We spent 2 full days at the zoo and another at SeaWorld, and we even took a day trip up to Legoland. It was quite possibly the best vacation I have ever taken, simply because I was able to spend quality time with my daughter without anyone making her feel like she was an afterthought. While we were away, Jessica inundated my phone with texts and calls. At first, they were filled with anger. "How could you do this to me? My parents are so disappointed. The kids won't stop asking where you are." Then, they turned manipulative. "Ethan is crying because he misses you," a claim I seriously doubted. And finally, they became pleading. "Please, just fly out here and join us. We can figure this out." My responses were minimal. I would usually send something brief like, "Emma and I are having a wonderful time," accompanied by a photo of us smiling on the beach or at the zoo. When we returned home, I discovered that Jessica and her kids had extended their stay in Florida by a few days, likely to postpone the inevitable confrontation. I used that time to think long and hard about our relationship. The more I reflected on it, the more I realized that this vacation incident wasn't an isolated event. It was simply the most obvious symptom of a much larger, ongoing problem. Jessica had consistently treated Emma as being less important than her own children, and I had been making excuses for her behavior, trying to overcompensate in other ways instead of addressing the root issue. 3 days after our return, Jessica and her kids finally came home. She initially tried to act as if nothing had happened, asking about our trip as though the airport scene had been a dream. But when I remained distant and cold, she finally brought it up. "Don't you think you overreacted just a little?" she asked. "You could have just told me you were upset about the ticket instead of humiliating me at the airport." I stared at her in disbelief. "I did tell you I was upset. You dismissed my concerns, just like you always do whenever the issue involves Emma." "That's not fair," she protested. "I treat Emma well." "You tolerate her," I corrected. "There is a significant difference. And I can't be in a relationship with someone who only tolerates my child." We had a long and very difficult conversation that night after the kids were in bed. I went through the list of times I felt she had pushed Emma aside, and she responded by alternating between defensive denials and half-hearted apologies. It became painfully clear to me that she genuinely did not see what she was doing wrong. In her mind, it was perfectly natural to prioritize her biological children, and she expected me to simply accept that. "I think you need to find another place to live," I said finally. "This is not working." She looked genuinely shocked. "You're breaking up with me over a vacation?" "No," I replied. "I'm breaking up with you because after 2 years together, you still don't consider my daughter to be part of your family. And that is something I will never compromise on." 6 months later. It has now been about 6 months since Jessica and her kids moved out. The breakup was difficult. She tried everything from crying to making threats, and a few mutual friends even tried to intervene on her behalf. But I held my ground, and she eventually had to accept that our relationship was over. Emma has been noticeably happier ever since. She has started to come out of her shell more, she expresses her feelings more openly, and she seems to feel much more at ease in her own home. She confessed to me that she always felt like she was walking on eggshells around Jessica, constantly trying not to take up too much space or ask for too much of my attention. Hearing that broke my heart, but it also solidified that I had made the right decision. Some of my friends and family members have suggested that I may have overreacted. After all, Jessica and I had built a life together for 2 years. They wondered if it would have been better to try couples therapy or find some other form of compromise. But for me, there is no compromise when it comes to my daughter's emotional well-being and her fundamental sense of belonging. Emma deserves to feel completely included and cherished in her own home and by the people in her father's life. As for me, I am focused on being the best father I can be. Emma and I have started a new tradition of having a daddy-daughter day twice a month, where we do something special, just the two of us. Sometimes it's as simple as getting ice cream and going to the local park. Other times, we take day trips to museums or go hiking on nearby trails. I have recently started dating again, very casually, and I am not introducing anyone to Emma yet. This time around, I am being much more cautious, looking for someone who understands from the very beginning that Emma and I are a package deal, always. This whole Florida and San Diego situation taught me a valuable lesson. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for your child is to stand up for them, even when it is difficult and uncomfortable. Emma may not remember all the specific details of our San Diego adventure when she's older, but I hope she will always remember the feeling of knowing that her dad put her first. Update. Wow. I truly did not expect this post to gain so much attention. Thank you all so much for the supportive comments and the awards. Since so many people have asked for an update, I thought I would share a few developments. First, Emma's mom, my ex-wife, contacted me after she read this post. Yes, she found it. Apparently, a friend of hers recognized our story and sent her the link. She called to thank me for protecting Emma and admitted that she had noticed Emma seemed more withdrawn after spending weekends at our house, but hadn't wanted to overstep. We've had some really productive conversations about co-parenting since then and are more aligned than ever on ensuring Emma feels safe and valued in both of her homes. Second, and this is something I never would have expected, Jessica's ex-husband also reached out to me. It turns out that their marriage ended for very similar reasons. He has an older son from a previous relationship, and he said Jessica never fully accepted him as part of their family. He told me that reading my post was like history repeating itself. We met up for a beer and had a surprisingly therapeutic conversation about the whole thing. As for Jessica, I've heard through mutual friends that she is telling people I was irrational and controlling, and that she dodged a bullet when we broke up. That's fine with me. People can believe whatever narrative they choose. The people who truly matter to me know the truth. Emma is thriving. Her teacher recently mentioned in a parent-teacher conference that she has become much more confident and participatory in class. Last weekend, she asked if we could start planning another trip, just the two of us, for next summer. I'm thinking about Yellowstone or maybe the Grand Canyon. Thanks again for all the support. To all the single parents out there, keep putting your kids first. They notice, and it matters more than you know. Edit. A lot of you have asked about Ethan and Chloe. Many commenters expressed concern for them, wondering if I am still in contact with them or if I miss them. The honest answer is yes, I do miss them. In spite of everything that happened, I spent years helping to raise them, and I do care about their well-being. I did try to maintain some contact after the breakup. I sent birthday cards and would ask mutual acquaintances how they were doing in school. However, Jessica made it very clear that she did not want me confusing them with my continued involvement. I have to respect her wishes. They are her children, and I have no legal rights to them. That is one of the most difficult parts of breakups in blended families. The non-biological parent often loses all access to the children they have bonded with. It's a painful reality, but I have to focus on the fact that they have two biological parents who love them and trust that they will be okay. If they ever decide to reach out to me when they are older, my door will always be open. But for now, I must respect the boundaries their mother has set, even if it hurts. Final update. 1 year later. It has been exactly 1 year since the airport incident, and so much has changed for the better. I thought I would share one last update, partly for my own sense of closure and partly because so many of you have continued to send messages asking how things are going. Emma is doing incredibly well. She is excelling in school, has made several close new friends, and has developed a newfound confidence that makes me incredibly proud. We did end up going to Yellowstone this past summer, and it was even more spectacular than San Diego. She is already trying to plan our next big adventure. She's pushing hard for Hawaii, but we'll see about that. As for me, I have been seeing someone new for a few months. Her name is Jenna, and she has a 9-year-old son, Alex, who gets along wonderfully with Emma. The very first time Jenna came over to my house for dinner, she brought a small gift for Emma, a beautiful journal with Emma's name engraved on the cover. It wasn't for a special occasion. She said she just wanted Emma to feel welcomed and included. It was such a small, thoughtful gesture, but it meant the world to me. I have been very intentional about taking this new relationship slowly and prioritizing the children's comfort above everything else. But so far, it has been incredibly refreshing to be with someone who instinctively understands the importance of making every child in a blended family feel equally valued. In an unexpected development, Ethan, who is now 15, reached out to me on social media about 2 months ago. He said he missed our conversations and asked if we could stay in touch after getting permission from both his mom and dad. We now exchange messages occasionally, mostly about his growing interest in computer programming, which is something we are working on together. It is a strictly platonic mentorship with very clear boundaries, but I am so glad he felt comfortable enough to reach out. Jessica and I maintain a cordial but distant relationship. We have run into each other a few times at community events, and while it's still a bit awkward, the intense animosity has faded. I think, on some level, she may finally understand why I did what I did, even if she will never be able to admit she was wrong. The most important lesson I have learned through all of this is that children are incredibly perceptive. They notice when they are being left out, even if they don't have the words to articulate it. And they also notice when someone stands up for them. The way Emma looks at me now, with complete and total trust that I will always be in her corner, is worth more than any romantic relationship. To everyone who supported me in the comments and messages over this past year, thank you. Your encouragement helped me stay strong during some very tough times. And to any parents navigating similar situations, trust your instincts. When it comes to your children's emotional well-being, they are rarely wrong. This will be my final update on this matter. We have all moved on to a new chapter in our lives, but I will always be grateful for the unexpected community I found here when I was just looking for a place to vent about some petty revenge at an airport. Summary. My girlfriend planned a family vacation but deliberately excluded my 10-year-old daughter. Instead of confronting her, I canceled my ticket and booked a separate trip just for me and my daughter. My girlfriend found out at the airport when we showed up to say goodbye before heading to our own boarding gate. The incident led to our breakup when I realized she would never truly accept my daughter as part of the family. Edit. Thank you for the overwhelming response of support. To address a few common questions. 1. No, there were no financial constraints that prevented her from buying Emma's ticket. She had enough airline miles for 4 tickets and made the choice to exclude Emma. 2. Yes, I had tried to discuss the importance of including Emma in our family on multiple occasions before this incident. This was the final breaking point, not the first sign of trouble. 3. Emma is doing great now and feels much more comfortable and secure at home. 4. Yes, I do miss her kids sometimes, but Jessica has limited my contact with them since our breakup. 5. For those suggesting I should have communicated better instead of resorting to petty revenge, perhaps you are right. Comment. This story is a powerful reminder of our inner strength. It shows that setting a firm boundary is not about starting a conflict, but about ending a pattern of disrespect. Our greatest responsibility is often to protect the emotional safety of those who trust us completely. I hope it makes us all think about the difference between simple tolerance and genuine, inclusive kindness. You and your loved ones should never be made to feel like an afterthought in your own lives. Sometimes, walking away from a situation is the most profound act of self-love and self-care you can perform. True peace is not found in forcing things to work, but in creating an environment where you can truly flourish. Healing often begins the moment you decide you deserve better. May you always have the courage to build a life where you and your loved ones are cherished, not just accepted. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.